Hello and welcome back to the channel. Today we are doing another movie review. We are reviewing the much anticipated Solo movie, which is the newest Star Wars movie spin-off outside of the episodes. And I gotta say, we were not super looking forward to this one.
We were not at all. I don't think we were actually debating on whether or not to even go see it. But I am actually glad we did.
It was surprisingly enjoyable. I had a good time.
So we'll get into it. If you guys haven't seen anything about this movie, this is like the origin story of Han Solo, and it doesn't even... You learn a lot about his past and things they reference in the later films, but I feel like there's still a lot more story left, and we'll talk about that later.
So let's start off with talking about Han Solo, the movie hero. So this is played by Alden Ehrenreich. Is that how you pronounce it? We're gonna go with it. I was pretty skeptical about him playing this character, but I think he did a pretty good job.
Yeah, we were talking about after we left the theater that we were both pretty surprised for us being concerned about that. That was kind of one of my chief concerns. But there's actually a lot of moments throughout the film that I felt like he really exuded Han, and there were some scenes that he looked just like Han as well. And so I thought they did a good job with that.
He did good with like some of the mannerisms and stuff. Like, it didn't feel like he was trying to carbon copy Harrison Ford, but he also was adhering to his personality traits as well. It was a pretty good mix.
And we also have Emilia Clarke in this film, and I think she does a really good job considering that I don't always find her acting the strongest, personally.
That is the mother of dragons, how dare you.
And I don't necessarily find her mothering those dragons always to be the strongest of acting quality. However, I think she does a good job, and I think the moments when her acting comes across flat in this film, the scenes like call for it because it fits within her character. And I think she's pretty interesting and is going to go some interesting places.
I agree. She was much more than a love interest, which I very much appreciated. Like, she was a pretty fleshed out character from my perspective, and I think she did great. We also have Woody Harrelson playing a kind of marauder, heist, rogue kind of character. And he was Woody Harrelson. I mean...
Woody Harrelson is kind of Woody Harrelson.
Nothing surprising to his performance. I think if you've seen anything Woody Harrelson's been in, he's about the same.
But he's good,
yeah.
And I think he definitely is a good character for Han's story and as they go through their heists. Of course, we have Chewie, and we actually get their first introduction in this film and kind of learn how it all started for the two of them, and that was fun. I think they did a good job with that. I might have personally made a few changes there, but overall, no complaints.
Now, the character I was most excited for in this movie was Lando, played by Donald Glover, because Donald Glover is having a moment, and I love it. He plays Lando to a frickin' T. Like, he is perfect in the way he talks, in his mannerisms, in his posture. It's just fantastic.
Yeah, I think he just does a crazy good job, and he brings the charisma. For a movie that I felt like actually had a surprising amount of charisma, he definitely, as soon as he comes on the screen, just like wipes everyone out of the way. And you also have his droid, which I don't know how I feel about the droids, to be honest.
Well, it's kind of a formula at this point when it comes to Star Wars movies. Which, like, I think it's fun, but it is kind of tired at the same time. It's weird.
So, my only issue is that in the original droids, R2 and C-3PO, they're sassy and witty, but also droids, like, with a little personality, whereas I feel like the personality in the last couple films with the droids is like an overdrive, and they're like, we will make them the biggest character in the film in terms of, like, personality craziness. And I don't know always how I feel about that. I still got me laughing in this movie, and I enjoyed it, but...
It doesn't bother me. I like it. We also have the big bad of this movie played by Paul Bettany. He's also having a moment that I appreciate. He plays a great villain. I am very excited to see him in more things eventually, like Hollywood. Keep on that, please. But I think he was good. He was a formidable villain. He played well with the other characters. I think it was a great performance.
One of my chief concerns with an origin story for a character that we didn't really need the origin story for is that they would make everything that is significant about his character in the original trilogy part of the plot of this first movie, and I felt like they did do that to an extent with quite a few things. I felt like some of them weren't too egregious, though, and I didn't mind. There was just a few here and there that they felt unnecessary. Like, you didn't need to show us, oh, that's how he did that, that's how he got that, that's why he says that phrase, that sort of thing sometimes went overboard for me.
I personally didn't have an issue with it. Like, I recognized, and there is one particular moment I had an issue with we might talk about at the end, but this section is spoiler-free, and I really didn't have a problem with it. I'll say I think The Force Awakens had way more callbacks than this movie did. At least that's my perspective on just a one watch-through. So when it comes to the plot of this movie, like we said earlier, there is like a major heist involved, which, as a big Firefly fan, was nothing new or original to me personally. If you want to watch a cool, like, futuristic train heist, go watch that. But outside of that, the plot was, I thought it was pretty good. It's a popcorn film. Like, there wasn't anything too crazy intricate, and I did find some of these smaller moments pretty predictable, but there were also moments I did not predict. So it wasn't overall predictable, but there were some times where I was like, yeah, okay, I see.
One thing I did find interesting about it being a heist film is that typically in a heist film you get like the Ocean's 11 moment where they outline the plan before, so that way then you can see it go south. But this film doesn't do that. They actually keep the viewer in the dark a lot of times. So you'll get the scene of them walking into the room to discuss the plan, and then they'll skip that scene, and you'll just be in the plan. And I actually found that pretty engaging because I felt like if they kept telling us what their plans were, those twists and turns wouldn't have been as enjoyable or surprising.
I also think it would have bogged down the plot a little bit. I felt like the pacing of this movie was actually pretty decent. Like, I didn't remember feeling at any point being like, oh, this is too slow, or this needs to, like, move forward a little bit more, or that went by too fast. I thought it was pretty well paced for just, like, a sit-back and enjoyable film.
Especially compared to The Last Jedi, which I was really feeling that runtime by the end. This one was shorter, but I never felt the runtime was too long or anything.
I think one of my favorite part of this movie and the Star Wars films in general is the score, and this movie has an excellent score. It brings in a lot of the themes of certain characters, like Han, obviously, he has his own theme that's been played throughout the original trilogy, and they brought that in at, like, key moments, but they didn't overplay it with how much he's on screen. And we also have a surprise character reveal later in the movie, which we will talk about after we're done with the spoiler-free section, and there was a theme involved in that I was very much enjoyed, and it was just a very cool score mixing. It was good sound mixing.
I think one of the best parts of this film for me is that despite me not being excited about it, this film exudes that Star Wars feel. A lot more than even some of the recent Star Wars films. This one, you get to go to fun planets, you get cool creatures, you get the sense of fun and adventure, and I appreciate that this movie was never trying to be anything more than that, and kind of like, it gets to be its own person, surprisingly, even though you're just telling us the origin story of a person we already know. It was a very interesting mix for me, and it turned out really well, in my opinion.
Overall, I think we both really enjoyed this film. I wouldn't put it maybe at, like, the top of the Star Wars films, but it was pretty enjoyable. I would watch it again, and I was pleasantly surprised. So that is going to wrap up our spoiler-free section. So if you have not seen this film yet, I highly recommend you exit. If you want to check out other videos of ours, you can go to our channel, do all that good stuff, subscribe if you like us. But we're going to talk about a few spoilers before we end this video, so we'll give you a second to leave. Bye. We'll miss you.
See you later.
All right.
So let's talk about my main problem with this movie. My biggest issue in the entire film, now that we're here, the spoiler.
They had a Batman vs. Superman moment.
Why the fuck would you make Han Solo's name a thing that gets created in his origin? That is the single moment of this movie where I was just like, oh, it was gross and bad. Why couldn't he have just been Han Solo from the beginning? But they had this whole moment where then the Imperial Guard goes, oh, you're all alone? Han Solo.
Yeah, I agree. I think that was really the only part of this movie where I was like, oh, no.
Yeah, as far as all the other callbacks, I was okay with them, even though I felt like the blaster was a little cheesy. There's a couple other cheesier moments, but they weren't as egregious as that one.
So another thing I kind of want to talk about was a little bit more of Emilia Clarke's character, because she was delightful, and I'm very excited to see what happens with her.
And they set it up for sequels, which was I did not expect that.
I did not know that this was going to be a continuation story. I thought this was going to be a one, kind of like Rogue One, where it's done when it's done.
But they definitely left it super open-ended because of the appearance of the craziest reveal.
Darth Maul. So as someone who always from the prequels was like, I would like more Darth Maul, please. Why did you have to get rid of him so soon? We know nothing about him. Like, he would be a cool character. And now we get to have it, and I'm very excited about it.
As someone who has seen, like, the Clone Wars cartoon and stuff, I knew he survived, but I always felt like that was one of those things that even though Disney goes, this is canon for the universe, they're never going to actually put it in their main films.
Surprise!
But I was actually pretty surprised that they were brave enough to have him appear. As soon as I saw those metal legs, the Sith Lord, I go, oh no, it's not. Which I didn't recognize the music like you did.
I did. I caught the music right before he took his hood off, and I was like, oh.
The only way I would have recognized it if they're like, ba, 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 ba.
I mean, it was the same.
Yeah, I know, but I didn't catch it all.
We all know I'm the sound-related person, so...
But I think that's super cool, and I'm very interested to see if we get a follow-up on that story.
I'm not gonna lie, I'm like way more intrigued on whatever movie comes out next that has to do with this storyline, which I'm guessing will be 2020, because we have new episode next year, and then we'll have a one-off the year after, you know, that's the formula so far. But I'm like much more jazzed about it now.
I would love to see an Ahsoka movie. I think that's her name. She is the apprentice of Anakin. And she's all in the Clone Wars, and it's a huge thing. Like, so if they're willing to bring in other parts, because a lot of the stories they do in that series are actually really cool, and if they decide to bring some of that to the big screen, we could actually get some interesting movies, not just rehashes of old characters.
I'm also interested to see if we have more of that rebellion group that we got introduced to in this movie, because it almost made that setup like that group is the kickoff of the rebellion, because... I mean, the rebellion, like, exists in the prequels, but it's not, like, the thing that it is in the original trilogy.
Yeah.
And so I'm wondering if this is, like, the beginning threads of that, which would be interesting to see. And it also introduced a lot of cool characters. Like, I could totally see them, like, focusing a good portion of a plot onto those characters. It was a pretty cool-looking group, and I'm like, I would like to get to know you more. Plus, Warwick Davis, is that his name? That guy. I like him.
Willow.
And I like most things that he's in. He's also Acorn in 10th Kingdom. But yes.
But as always, we are very interested to see and hear what you guys thought about this movie. Let us know down in the comment section below. And if you stuck with us through this whole video, please subscribe. We have a bunch of different content for you on our channel. And if you want to see some of those, you guys can click right over there. And we'll see you guys next time.